We start this narrative within the dark emptiness of the abyss while our protagonist awakens from his extended rest. The primary inquiry inside his thoughts becomes, what on earth occurred? He lacked certainty regarding how many hours he had floated inside the infinite brightness. You will not detect him grumbling, regardless. Floating across this realm appeared secure, warm actually. However, his continuous float toward ecstasy got disrupted by an odd noise. His initial assumption suggested perhaps his parent had ultimately returned. He could not be more incorrect. The noise originated from an interface notification greeting our youth Anthony. It represented an individualized salutation. The interface notification possesses superior etiquette compared to numerous typical individuals. The following paragraph of words proved less polite. Instead, it delivered a harsh alert stating Anthony had perished. He ought to anticipated something comparable previously. The tone of the alert resembled his parent not whatsoever. Assuming he perished, then what location on Earth contains him? The final memory he retains involved casually studying a novel inside the warmth of his residence. Consequently, a highly probable chance exists that this realm of infinite radiance represents paradise. Yet, assuming it does, then what location contains the aquatic basin and the unlimited dining spread? The sibling attempted comforting Anthony to remain peaceful, since he would shortly arise to experience existence once more. Although inside a different realm, it originated from a tone that proved heavy and rough, a tone that resembled precisely that famous character clothed completely in white, the individual adored with reverence across the globe. Assuming you selected Christ, then you made an error. The interface resembled precisely the wizard. The infinite brightness vanished, exposing a foggy azure heavens, while he received information that he will reincarnate inside the realm of Pandra, where fate and chance will decide his destiny. Anthony lacked preparedness currently. He attempted begging the wizard to pause, since the farewell phrases suggested he would experience an existence packed with thrill, danger, a chance during every moment. Perhaps sorcery and mythical entities will additionally exist. Disregarding his rambling, the wizard delivered Anthony the summary of his condition following reincarnation. He stands at rank 1. Possessing 15 strength, 12 resilience, 25 cleverness, 18 determination, 30 vitality, and 0 magic. Witnessing the arrangement instantly boosted his assurance. He appeared powerful theoretically. Perhaps he will resemble the main character inside his preferred electronic entertainment, Tales of Tilda. Yet, a thorough breakdown displayed his abilities as burrowing, corrosive blast, clutch, and chomp. The classification additionally includes his variety identification, recording him as a juvenile insect laborer. Assuming his magic lacks presence, then he can abandon the aspiration of becoming a wizard. The wizard requires explanation, and his abilities summary proved simply odd. The chomp exists, followed by the considerably stranger corrosive blast, where precisely located his godlike protagonist abilities. The most disturbing element among all proved his recording as a juvenile insect laborer, a formica. He will not merely reincarnate as an insect, however a freshly emerged labor insect additionally. Perhaps Anthony severely betrayed somebody during his previous existence, therefore the wizard interface penalizes him. Yet, that remains impossible. He hardly possessed any bond toward other individuals previously, evaluating his vacant social media inbox and his severe social anxiety. He received a painful reminder that he lacked any companions or any other significant bonds. The wizard instructed him to advance and craft his individual route. Perhaps it represents the insect route. Assuming that holds true, then the wizard can merely proceed and craft his parent as well. Completely unready for upcoming events, the rough tone initiated counting backward for the commencement of the spirit migration 3, 2, 1. Everything appeared soundless once the countdown ended. Spirit migration finished successfully, alongside the commencement of the emerging sequence. Anthony found himself forced into a strangely uneasy posture. His physique appeared strange. It resembled being compressed from every direction while he trembled intensely. He lacked complete belief regarding every message panel previously, yet he genuinely reincarnates as an insect. It genuinely occurs. Examining his fresh, delicate frame, he detected 6 appendages. That represents 1 verification regarding the insect frame list. 2 sensors exist. His powerful jaws operate completely. Measuring from skull toward the tip of his torso, he measured 3 separate physique divisions. He previously maintained companion insects, and now he transformed into 1 additionally. It resembles a strange horror situation, not including the terrible illumination situation. It proves darker than an unilluminated evening within his present region. Everything remains completely dark, and it fails, assisting that his sight proves blurry maximum. However, upon marching briefly, Anthony commenced detecting dim and fuzzy, yet behind the illumination near the tunnel exit, something appeared azure. Luckily, he retains color perception. Besides that, he questioned what additional capabilities he possessed. Perhaps the moment arrived utilizing his fresh insect structure toward maximum capability. Feeling the surroundings utilizing sensors appeared strange, yet he detected unrecognizable aromas and breeze flows forward. The prominent aroma represented the fragrance of mustiness, which suggests he must reside beneath the soil. Yet, assuming he represents an insect, then shouldn't he detect chemical signals? Lacking chemical signals to detect, then what location contains his siblings, the hive? Anthony received an additional opportunity during existence, and he refuses becoming solitary during this one additionally. Upon marching several extra moments, he commenced detecting aromas resembling his. Perhaps a fresh ally waited near the opposite tunnel side. He merely requires tracking the azure pulsing illumination while hoping negative events avoid occurring while he reunites alongside an insect sibling. His thrill increased the nearer he approached the exit. He enthusiastically hurried toward meeting a companion insect frame, resolved assisting whatever duty they required toward the honor of the hive. Yet, his arrival near the tunnel conclusion failed proceeding as he anticipated. His fresh ally appeared experiencing severe difficulty while floating within the atmosphere contrary to his desire. Near the opposite side stood a terrible creature, smiling joyfully alongside his pointed teeth completely visible, tightly grouped tissue enclosed beneath a durable coating of coarse armor. It represents horror material toward somebody as miniature as Anthony, the insect. Alongside the potential ally eliminated, the scaled creature remained free hunting toward his victim while arrogantly chewing continuously. He failed consuming the insect completely initially. He severed the unfortunate individual frame toward fragments first. Anthony commenced panicking. He remains merely an individual who enjoyed insects and novels. He failed in rolling toward whatever this represented. As much as he desired declining, this genuinely occurred. This represents his reality currently. Insects becoming consumed and stepped upon by creatures. The alternate insect confined near the creature appendages stared toward him alongside begging eyes, and it resembled a alert. What can an individual insect achieve during his circumstance? Well, merely one concept reached Anthony's thoughts. It represents his sole option. It represents sprinting as rapidly as his freshly emerged 6 appendages could potentially sprint. Sprint like his existence required it, since it required it. Sprinting initially during a fresh frame, he appeared awkward extremely. He even stumbled and collapsed facially forward. Following sprinting extensively, he ought to have escaped the region of that creature currently. However, what if an alternate one leisurely marches within this tunnel and detects him as a rapid treat? His sole method regarding survival represented discarding his human traditions and contemplating resembling an insect. As though by impulse, he understood what he required to accomplish: excavate. Excavate as intensely as he could. It represents one concept understanding what an insect would accomplish, yet it represents an alternate concept executing it. His appendages failed succeeding. He merely scraped the soil. That moment, Anthony recalled his period watching his companion insects utilize their jaws toward excavating. Consequently, he basically requires excavating the soil utilizing his muzzle without wasting an alternate moment. He instantly submerged his reliable jaw within the coarse exterior and commenced chewing upon soil. Currently, this represents what you label excavating. He achieved greater advancement within merely several seconds utilizing his muzzle compared to utilizing his appendages toward several moments. Following excavating toward a suitable distance, he sculpted a round cavity alongside sufficient area toward maneuver. Alongside a fresh headquarters created, Anthony the insect could ultimately rest upon his spine following a difficult period. He remains secure currently, yet becoming detected by alternate creatures would represent an execution order. How did he genuinely arrive toward this region initially? It failed completing a complete period, yet he already faced a terrifying creature. Fresh insects ought to emerge inside a hive, secured and enclosed alongside companions. Evaluating the destiny of his unfortunate companion insect above near the scaled creature region, matters prove chaotic. He might not represent the solitary individual dropped inside these desperate circumstances, which suggests that an assault approached. Alongside slightly additional period toward contemplating, Anthony recalled that the wizard interface mentioned something regarding a capability marker and tissue. The realm that Anthony currently occupies represents a secret. The arrival of the interface produced the society's massive benefits, yet they fail remembering what they sacrificed. Returning toward Anthony problem, he currently possesses one capability marker and one tissue toward allocate. He requires making it matter. Assuming this represents an entertainment, like circumstance, some sort of display ought to exist he can open. Initially, he attempted lifting his appendages and yelling rank increase toward the atmosphere. Not merely did it fail functioning, yet he additionally resembled an idiot excessively. An alternate concept emerged inside his thoughts. Perhaps this single will accomplish the duty. He firmly swiped inside the vacant area forward and shouted condition reveal as intensely as he could, and it functioned. An extremely intriguing message panel emerged before him. He still fails determining whether his numbers prove elevated or decreased, yet regardless, he can view them openly currently. Near the abilities section, he detected clutch. Perhaps it indicates that he will retain objects extremely effectively. Near its explanation, it declared that clutch represents the capability toward retain surfaces and items without releasing. An instance regarding its usage represents the capability toward march across barriers. Anthony's gaze shined alongside happiness following reading that. This might represent the compassionate and victorious restoration of Master-Wizard interface, his master and redeemer. He might merely represent a message box, yet he would certainly possess the most elegant facial hair and brows within the realm. Instead, regarding an improved label regarding this commendable tone regarding blessing, the wizard will remain the wizard temporarily, and Anthony will honor that label, since he received the most valuable present, the capability toward open vital information alongside an individual thought. Evaluating his capability arrangement, he understood that concentrating toward making the correct selection proved essential. Should he select the corrosive blast, perhaps enhancing his burrowing capabilities would yield additional advantages. The wizard proves excellent, yet it depends upon Anthony toward discovering what his capabilities achieve. As much as he understands, numerous insect varieties exist upon planet that possess capabilities toward eject corrosive liquid from their posterior region. Consequently, he must belong toward one among those terrifying varieties of corrosive ejecting insects. It opens the possibility toward strike without approaching excessively near the objective. It represents a strategy that could produce evading immediate elimination during conflict. A distant strike would prove extremely beneficial, yet evaluating his present circumstance, chomping, marching, burrowing, and ejecting corrosive liquid fail representing the finest instruments toward concentrate toward currently. What Anthony severely lacks represents data. He failed discovering where exactly he resides and what varieties of alternate entities occupy this region besides insects and scaled entities. He proves highly confident that he lacks speech tissue. Consequently, he merely possesses himself toward depend upon regarding data collection outside near the tunnels. Venturing outside alone alongside who understands how numerous strange terrors could produce unimaginable injury would represent insanity. Merely contemplating what could eliminate an insect upon the exterior proved already terrifying. Anthony required attempting calming himself regarding experiencing a complete anxiety episode. He must remain logical and relaxed toward remaining alive. Following providing himself an encouragement, Anthony focused. He merely possesses himself toward depend upon currently. He already discovered his foundation capabilities. He merely requires allocating his capability markers. That represents the crucial inquiry. However, how does he even approach it? The solution arrived precisely while he contemplated regarding it. The wizard himself delivered him the notification toward allocate his capability markers. He failed preventing himself honoring this intelligent and splendid independent interface tone. He desired the wizard, the provider of hope and illumination, facial hair remaining soft permanently. Numerous possibilities exist, consequently it proves difficult restricting the finest selection. He requires approaching this matter logically. Possessing the capability toward sprint quicker would certainly assist him evading opponents when situations worsen. Tunnel awareness would additionally simplify his navigation across the exterior of the subterranean. Chomping and corrosive represent purely aggressive techniques that could assist him battling more efficiently when circumstances demand it. Regarding physique enhancements accessible toward purchase using tissue, he could select armor, jaws, appendages, sensors, corrosive reservoir. It proves unreasonable claiming that among every resident of this region, he currently represents the feeblest. Consequently, he selected enhancing his vision utilizing one marker of tissue, and he allocated his single capability marker toward concealment, efficiently enhancing his capability toward hide and march without becoming detected. Upon verification, his sensors commenced burning extremely. It resembled an actual flame ignited inside his iris. The abrupt pulse regarding agony resembled a treason from the wizard himself. Anthony rotated across the floor, attempting distracting himself regarding the agony of his burning sensors, yet once matters calmed, he admitted it failed, proving as terrible as he anticipated. Regarding physique enhancement, assuming he retained a human frame, the procedure would certainly consume eternity. Currently, he gained efficient defenses regarding what the region offers. Alongside freshly discovered assurance, he crawled his method outside the tunnel, since it represented the period toward investigate. His vision appeared clearer. No distinct aromas or identifiable tremors exist near the distance. He received an option among two routes. The correct route represents where the creature consumed the alternate insects. Consequently, that represents impossible, which leaves him alongside merely one selection. Proceed left and confront whatever this route might contain regarding him. The anxious insect vanished. Anthony, the assured investigator, had assumed control. He rapidly crawled as rapidly as feasible, and his velocity proved not terrible whatsoever. Anthony chuckled internally while his journey proceeded lacking any complication. Reasoning suggests that hanging inverted ought to assist his concealment and clutch capabilities. Currently, he merely requires utilizing his fresh sensors. Compared to previously, he could detect slightly better currently. He even identified mysterious winding and splitting azure channels within the stones. Alongside enhanced vision, he can additionally observe what occurs regarding his physique. Alongside duration, a newborn insect delicate and pale armor ought to solidify. Continuing his crawl, he ultimately reached the tunnel conclusion and received a dazzling illumination. It originated from the azure channels and the liquid reservoir within a chamber. The basin proved enormous, yet equally enormous proved the creatures floating around it. He proved so focused upon the liquid that he nearly failed detecting the terrifying entities floating around. Assuming he represents the feeblest entity currently, he would prove as good as deceased if he becomes detected. Concealment will not merely prove essential regarding survival, yet additionally regarding efficient data collection. Regarding his vision, everybody understands that possessing poor vision proves awful. Anthony proved so accustomed toward human vision that switching toward pathetic insect vision proved confusing. Assuming something failed moving, he could barely detect it. Everything you must recall represents insects represent a collective varieties, thousands toward millions of feeble individuals merging toward creating something powerful. An individual insect would possess terrible detection, and they compensate utilizing unity. That represents precisely what makes his circumstance miserable. He stands completely solitary, and he ought to survive when he could stumble across a resting wyvern alongside his poor vision. Consequently, he proved resolved toward making enhancing his vision a priority, and would halt until he could detect a beetle tremble across 5 meters of solid rock. Following some duration, Anthony developed his fresh crimson armor. While he examined the cliff above the reservoir, he commenced detecting some terrible sounds everywhere. Marching toward the walls, he understood that he required obtaining a nearer view. Following several moments of gripping and racing toward the summit, he stands nearly near the sound origin. Mapping the soil alongside his enhanced vision, he simply fails locating the spot. He could barely concentrate alongside every strange azure channels squirming upon the exterior obstructing. Detecting the liquid droplets emerging from the roof, he ultimately detected the liquid reservoir origin. Yet that shouldn't represent the bizarre sound origin he kept detecting. Anthony genuinely requires focusing, since something additional must exist he fails detecting. It represented basic reasoning, yet he failed connecting the dots. Naturally, it represented the entities that produced those sounds. From the security of the roof, he examined the howling wolf entity below, noticing that the canine eyes drifted toward him. He instantly concealed behind a jutting stone that proved excessively near regarding comfort. Perhaps it represents the period toward testing his fresh capability. Anthony ultimately deployed his completely fresh concealment mode capability. His crimson armor instantly became clear. It proved cool. Alongside his visibility being resolved, he ought to observe what occurs near this reservoir peacefully. He already obtained a clear view near that unpleasant wolf-scaled creature that nearly detected him previously. What arrives next toward note represents precisely his worst opponent, the individual that massacred his companion insects, the home destroyer and infant thief himself, the wicked scaled creature. Regardless how he examined this entity list, Anthony failed preventing feeling that something appeared incorrect regarding the circumstance. None among these hazardous entities assaulted each other. It resembles they possess a silent pact created around a circular table or something. Anthony failed eliminating the possibility that he missed a great entity peace agreement gathering or something comparable. He understood it would prove impossible obtaining any solid responses by remaining stationary near one location. Perhaps advancing slightly nearer toward the activity would assist, yet he must continuously remind himself that gradual and consistent wins the contest. Crawling downward from the roof consumed several moments alongside his dimension. Assuming insects could physically perspire, then liquid would already flowing from his complete frame so rapidly that it would represent sufficient filling an alternate reservoir within this mysterious chamber. Yet, his workout failed, proving pointless. Moving around alongside concealment active elevated it toward rank 2. He traveled a considerable distance toward descending toward where the activity occurred. His original suspicion regarding capabilities proved correct. Alongside continuous usage, they can train toward elevated ranks. Concealing and examining would essentially permit him eliminating 2 targets, utilizing 1 action. He could actively acquire valuable data while training his concealment. While his assurance expanded, he required shooting it downward and waking up. Being excessively arrogant like this proved terrible. Assuming he becomes detected, he represents deceased meat. Calming himself, he approached near enough, detecting the next entity group wandering near the liquid. Entities existed tangled alongside a cluster. Consequently, it proved fairly difficult observing what it genuinely represented. Upon approaching nearer, he received piercing crimson sensors, azure claws, and appendages, hundreds alongside hundreds of appendages. Anthony observed the terrible structure of the millipedes and failed preventing regurgitating. He cursed this cursed chamber toward displaying him something so repulsive. He could genuinely utilize some medicines currently. Regarding the final resident of this cursed location, the scaled entity failed, appearing so terrible. He does require watching out regarding those unpleasant thorns, however. He might represent the feeblest currently, yet Anthony could detect the possibility converting every these awful entities toward a potential crop regarding tissue. Every the markers within the realm merely await him. Yet, in order toward accomplish that, preparations require occurring, and they require being thorough. Across the next several hours, he diligently remained above the reservoir, while gradually shifting his location toward remaining concealed from the residents. He carefully observed the manner the entities moved, taking special note regarding where they proceeded following leaving the reservoir region. During Period 1, the initial duo toward depart represented the millipede entities and the scaled creature. Strangely, they proceeded toward the identical location toward exit. During Period 2, the next single toward quit represented the wolf-scaled entities. They proceeded directly toward a miniature tunnel near the southern terminus. During the third period regarding examination, the final single toward leave the reservoir represented the thorny scaled entity, while it crawled toward a barrier and vanished. It resembles, we possess an alternate barrier dweller resembling Anthony himself. He would label the scaled creature sibling if he failed, requiring pursuing and consuming the victim. That intense investigation period elevated his concealment toward rank 3. Within this location, patience receives compensation. It arrived during a perfect moment additionally, since his unfortunate insect appendages required a pause severely. Following arriving near his exit location, the headquarters proved ultimately merely 1 excavation distant. Anthony desired that he could relax, yet he fails affording doing so. Additional work exists that requires occurring initially. He could desperately require additional breathing area within his headquarters. That requires some excavation utilizing his powerful jaws. He commenced chewing upon the soil enthusiastically. He diligently collected the soil by impulse during the procedure regarding securing his location. Precisely when he achieved excavation rank 2, a notification congratulating him regarding securing a suitable shelter sounded out. Ultimately, following excavating resembling a lunatic, he could take a brief pause. He experienced a familiar sensation resembling when his relatives halted delivering him currency and neglected placing nutrition inside the cooler. He begins experiencing hunger, and he lacks unfamiliarity regarding the sensation. While his abdomen rumbled, he convinced himself that he merely requires waiting. When he awakens, he can proceed toward hunting his initial victim. He already possesses a thorny objective within mind. Ultimately, the next period quickly arrived, and Anthony currently perched near the chamber roof. His appendages excavated within the chilly stone, and an individual concept floated inside his thoughts. He proved so hungry that he drooled at the sight of the entities below. Yet alongside hunger arrives weakness and trembling. He began exhausting gradually. His thoughts filled alongside sweets, loaves, pastries, and meats, every the tasty items he consumed during his previous existence spinning across his thoughts. The starvation became so severe that his thoughts begins playing tricks toward him. The final period, he observed the scaled creature. He could have sworn it resembled a nutrition piece and nearly jumped downward toward a chomp from the roof. Even the unpleasant millipedes begin appearing more and more resembling a cluster of tasty pasta presented upon a golden tray. Anthony requires resolving this starvation issue before he eliminates himself by biting upon something he shouldn't. He prepared his next action toward excessively long toward allowing his abdomen obstructing advancement. 2 periods. It has been 2 complete periods regarding preparation. He examined every aspect regarding this chamber conclusion in extreme detail. 2 periods regarding minimal toward zero rest combined alongside crippling starvation produce him difficulty concentrating toward remaining alert. He consumed so much duration hanging inverted above the liquid basin that he nearly slept and dropped within the liquid repeatedly. Observing that mysterious reservoir, he understood that dropping would represent a swim that proved far from pleasant. A welcome consequence regarding pushing himself toward the boundaries as a spy, alongside his concealment mode active the complete period, was elevating the capability toward rank 4, thanks toward spending his resting duration excavating away and expanding his concealment location. His excavation capability climbed toward rank 3. That represents what Anthony performs. He prepares and he develops. That represents how the feeble can target the powerful. Still, starvation proves a difficult opponent toward confront. He could merely hope that he could successfully conquer his initial victim soon. While his sensors twitched, he detected the objective approaching. He could already detect the stench originating from the entity. When Anthony observed the illumination being mirrored from a pair of scaled sensors inside a groove, he understood it represented nearly performance. His selected victim utilized the barrier near the chamber side as a resting location, crawling downward toward obtaining a drink within the reservoir once every period. It represents basically a solitary entity alongside a predictable motion pattern, an entity that can conquer following several moments. The thorny scaled entity ultimately emerged from its concealment location toward its daily hydration. It represents the period toward testing whether Anthony's preparation could produce a successful achievement. Activating concealment, he quietly marched upon the barrier, attempting catching toward his scaled victim. He assured his abdomen that they wouldn't require waiting long. They merely require obtaining the correct location toward strike, and the duty will succeed. Upon obtaining a nearer view near the scaled thorns, he understood that receiving stung by one among those would represent terrifying. Yet he fails starting thinking fearfully currently. Fear represents the mind destroyer, and his abdomen relies upon him. He prepared so much that he fails affording any distractions. The timing regarding his leap will determine everything. Once his planned location had appeared, Anthony failed wasting an individual moment toward strike. His concealment delivered him the possibility toward ejecting his corrosive blast from above, splashing it upon one among the scaled entity appendages. Anthony already celebrated internally as Stage 1 proved a success. Exiting concealment mode, the scaled entity squealed within agony alongside its appendage liquefied toward the tissue and framework. When the victim ultimately observed the individual responsible regarding its agony, Stage 2 arrived into complete effect. He mocked the scaled entity, asking it whether it genuinely desired battling upon the barrier, an action that represented practically resembling inviting demise. Anthony's incredible grip still already stands at rank 3 following all the investigation he performed. Neither the barrier nor the scaled entity would represent a challenge toward him. Additionally, he possesses the natural advantage regarding being agile and lightweight, while the creature proves heavy and sluggish. Alongside appendages burning from the corrosive liquid, maneuvering around the barrier would prove impossible, yet the simple-minded creature proved blinded by fury. It utilized its powerful tail toward attempting shaking down Anthony alongside additional energy injected within the tail crash. The chamber barrier wrecked, while Anthony leapt from his advantageous location regarding security. Everything proceeds according toward strategy currently. He proved practically toying alongside his nutrition at this moment. His next corrosive blast aimed precisely toward the scaled entity muzzle. An alternate liquefied injury, an alternate period of writhing and agony upon the soil. Quickly jumping across the chamber barriers, Anthony adjusted his location toward a safer and more advantageous location. The roar regarding agony originating from the suffering scaled entity echoed across the reservoir. That represents Anthony Q toward concluding this rapidly, as he fails allowing some alternate entities concluding this conflict that he orchestrated. Yielding toward the destructive injuries, the scaled entity began slowing. It represents nearly the period toward it ultimately departing, yet before its strength drained, the scaled entity actually obtained one additional tail strike left toward deliver. This one proved beyond Anthony's expectations. The dash and abrupt tail strike caught him unaware. Luckily, he proved far enough obtaining a split moment regarding area toward react and evade within a panic. Alongside the scaled entity final strength spent upon a failed strike, Anthony's opportunity toward concluding matters once and permanently has appeared. From the summit of the roof, he jumped downward alongside his jaws prepared toward bite and retain. A loud and harsh crack filled the region near the reservoir. Anthony failed daring release the victim's coarse skin, since currently represented the period regarding the ultimate stage. The ultimate stage proved simple. It will represent a contest of perseverance while he continues applying biting pressure upon the creature until they ultimately experience a free drop from the barrier. Positioning the scaled entity below, he permitted the creature absorb the drop injury while continuing his relentless chomp. When the scaled entity ultimately halted moving and resisting, he apologized, since this represents the rule regarding the realm and nutrition represents nutrition. Anthony commenced ejecting corrosive blasts across the scaled entity frame toward assisting bypassing its durable skin. During the procedure, the corrosive blast additionally climbed toward rank 2. It proved a rapid rank increase. Examining the victim, he observed that the unfortunate item failed deceased, yet it resembles they will require taking the next action, the difficult method, regarding both the victim and the hunter. That represents Anthony mercilessly chewed upon the dying scaled entity durable frame, blood and viscera staining the soil. The terrible cracks filled the space. Following some duration, his bike climbed toward rank 3. It consumed him 10 complete moments toward accomplish it, yet the terrible duty was ultimately completed. Following being refreshed by the nourishment, Anthony resembled a risk-taker that had recently hunted. He resembled a warrior fresh from his latest life-risking contest. He arrived, he observed, he conquered style matter. He literally consumed the opponent following the victory. Currently that he contemplates regarding it, he realizes that he failed laboring this intensely regarding something. No, he failed pushing himself regarding anything during his previous existence. Examining back regarding how he existed, he mainly recalls experiencing emotionless permanently, yet currently he conquered a rank 2 Spinetta El Cerdos, achieving rank 2 alongside the XP award. An additional capability marker has been granted. The wizard suddenly proved so chatty alongside the notifications. Consequently, this scaled entity represents a Spinetta Leros, a label that sounds vaguely ancient. This failed representing his initial encounter alongside ancient characters. His variety assignment has him recorded as Formica. Recalling his insect-maintaining pastime, Formica ought to represent the ancient label regarding forest insects. Assuming every entity within this realm possesses an ancient label, then his novel knowledge will certainly prove convenient. Aside from that discovery, he additionally discovered 3 extremely vital things regarding his circumstance. Initially, he can obtain knowledge toward elevating his rank following conquering alternate entities. Secondly, he can earn a fresh valuable capability marker toward allocate at every rank increase. And thirdly, since this Spinetta item represented a rank 2 entity, he can assume 2 additional theories: the scaled entity either born at rank 2, or it managed elevating rank 1. More importantly, he fails possibly forgetting what he arrived here toward accomplish, and that represents claiming the frame of his victim toward strengthening his own. As a hunter, he requires consuming and becoming stronger, consume the tissue of the powerful and the feeble. Anthony proved thankful regarding the nutrition. Fail misunderstanding him, yet the flavor of the scaled meat proved far from tasty. It proved awful toward the point regarding producing an alternate regurgitation session. Yet currently that he consumed meat from a fresh tissue source, he has been granted 1 marker. The wizard merely kept talking toward him currently. Reclining within the chamber, his abdomen rumbles replaced alongside loud belches. He ought to be set regarding nutrition toward the next week at the minimum. Aside from the contentment regarding a complete stomach, he additionally possesses an alternate bonus crop regarding the wizard. Currently, it represents the period toward retreating toward his headquarters while constructing his next action. Once he reached the chamber summit, Anthony observed downward near the entities below. They proved completely fascinated alongside the reservoir liquid. They fail even understanding that one among their companions vanished. Following several moments of scurrying around later, Anthony ultimately reached his modest headquarters, touching his appendages together resembling a wicked strategist as it represented the period toward plotting an alternate strategy. Initially, let us possess a rapid examination regarding his refreshed condition following the hunt. His numbers prove basically identical, yet his capabilities developed immensely. He failed preventing feeling resembling an individual insect proceeding toward a thrilling journey and experiencing amazing development. Even against the collision of fate and the unexpected circumstances, he will still prevail despite everything. He will endure regardless how stacked represents against him. Yet, that proves sufficient dreaming toward 1 period. He requires descending from the skies and being practical currently. Shaking his skull from left toward right, Anthony focused upon the present. Currently, he requires making an alternate crucial choice, and it requires him toward being cautious. He merely possesses 2 tissue markers toward allocate. Consequently, he will require evaluating every possibility carefully. His stare kept proceeding toward the identical location his sensor alteration. He desired evolving his sensors toward +2 toward the love of the sacred illumination. When the wizard tone requested him whether he desired allocating 2 tissue markers toward reaching the next rank, Anthony failed, hesitating toward verify. He genuinely failed, becoming accustomed toward the abrupt consequence regarding burning his sensors out toward the sake regarding advancement. He disliked the burn so much. Following a duration, his sensors watered from the agony, yet it was ultimately completed. His current vision still proves far worse than the typical human sensor ability, yet it will suffice toward currently. He requires allocating his single capability marker. Luckily, this choice wouldn't prove excessively difficult, as he already possessed a capability within mind for some duration currently, and that capability represents named tunnel awareness. He remained within this cursed region toward several days currently, yet he still remains ignorant regarding most of its characteristics. Too many mysteries exist within this realm, consequently tunnel awareness could prove essential regarding his extended survival. Utilizing this fresh capability, he can essentially expand the scope regarding his every action. It would permit him exploring farther than his safe region, while still being secured toward returning toward his solitary location regarding relative security, his headquarters. When the wizard requested verification, Anthony happily complied alongside a smile upon his miniature face. Obtaining a fresh capability felt wildly distinct from the agony regarding the physique alteration procedure. He described it resembling experiencing liquid flowing across his hair within a shower, except it flowed and occurring deep inside his thoughts. Following several moments, the wizard informed him that tunnel awareness had been acquired. He could merely hope that it would demonstrate how efficient it proved during his next investigation duty. Anthony collected several leaves from the chamber and crafted them toward a mattress before his next investigation. He rightfully deserves a pleasant and soft rest. While he slept, the sound regarding human footfalls approached closer. 2 shapes that appeared human were crossing a thick woodland alongside an individual illumination origin. The female requested the male whether he observed something. He assured her that it represented nothing. It represents merely that his thoughts have been playing tricks toward him lately. Besides, wherever they proceed, any entity that would attempt threatening them would experience an extremely unpleasant surprise. Alongside his abdomen no longer bothering him alongside hunger, Anthony resembled he slept upon cloud N within pure ecstasy. It proved so pleasant that he desired remaining within this location permanently, yet his paradise regarding a dream interrupted when he jolted awake. He managed rolling from his mattress and planted facially first into the hard soil below. In reflection, he ought to have anticipated it arriving. Dreams like that always prove excessively pleasant toward be true, yet it delivered him the clarity toward avoiding lingering upon unachievable items. It represents the period toward concentrating toward investigation and mapping out a strategy regarding his next victim. Anthony the insect chuckled maliciously before performing the labor. Something additional existed that he desired attempting. Utilizing his sensors as a makeshift affection symbol, he shouted reveal inside his thoughts resembling a sorceress. When that failed functioning, he attempted the phrase's open profile. He contemplated utilizing the wizard example through utilizing open entrance resembling the films, yet failed even attempting. He genuinely contemplated that one among those would function toward accomplishing what he attempted doing. Following consuming the scaled entity, the wizard informed him that he had unlocked a fundamental profile regarding the Spinetta Lazaros, yet he struggled locating the correct phrase toward accessing the cursed item. It only occurred toward him currently that perhaps he overthought the entire procedure slightly excessively this whole duration. Consequently, he loosened his grip from his headquarters ceiling, dropping toward the soil and shouting the ancient label of the scaled entity while performing a champion landing. Surprisingly, it functioned. The complete fundamental profile regarding his initial victim opened toward read. The wizard genuinely supports him during moments like this. Spinetta certains can convert toward thorn-scaled entity. It possesses pointed thorns that contain hazardous poison. Following the difficulty that he experienced, that miniature piece regarding data represented the solitary item he obtained. It proved extremely disappointing, yet Anthony requires gaining control. It already declared that it represents merely a fundamental profile. Ultimately, perhaps the interface functions gradually. If he hunts and consumes more regarding the identical variety, he might obtain accessing a more thorough profile alongside more valuable data. He selected pushing that matter away from currently. He possesses more urgent matters toward address, as it represents the period toward pursuing his next duty. His journey back towards spying regarding the residents of the reservoir felt considerably lighter he sang while crossing the roof. An alternate period, an alternate entity toward create a victim. From the appearance, it resembles not much has altered since he returned toward his headquarters following feasting. He observed a miniature variation from previously, however. Alongside his freshly enhanced +2 sensors, the reservoir below appears glowing slightly brighter than it did within the past. What he proves most curious regarding within this circumstance represents connected toward the reservoir and its liquid. During his initial period within this location, he nearly became a treat toward the scaled creature, yet the sprinting failed, making him dehydrated. During period 3, he located the leaves regarding his makeshift mattress, and he failed experiencing dehydration either. Period 6, when he ultimately stuffed himself alongside scaled meat, and he still failed craving a drop regarding liquid. While these entities proceed out of their path toward hydrating from the reservoir, Anthony, an insect entity himself, failed experiencing dehydration whatsoever. He ought to be an entity too, correct? Consequently, what instructs the alternate chamber residents toward hydrating the liquid, when he personally fails possessing the urge toward doing so? Exists something fundamentally distinct regarding them or himself. Alongside those inquiries within mind, Anthony already understands what he requires doing next. He hurried downward from the roof toward finally investigating the mysterious liquid regarding the reservoir and living toward telling the narrative. It could prove extremely hazardous toward descending there. Consequently, it proves wise toward taking infant steps initially. Even within the face regarding the hazardous millipede cluster, he must remind himself toward failing proceeding excessively far and excessively rapidly. Examining the entities around, there truly exists a large portion regarding scaled, like entities within this damp location. Exists the bipedal scaled creature and the thorny scaled entity. Every entity possesses some sort regarding scaled characteristic within their structure. Perhaps it represents some kind regarding design. While he lost within thought, he failed observing that a wolf-scaled entity curiously and fiercely preceded his path. Precisely when it prepared leaping upon Anthony, the canine commenced retreating nervously, confusing our insect boy. Observing behind, it resembles the wolf-scaled entity proved cautious regarding the towering millipede. Anthony proved fortunate enough avoiding the wolf-scaled entity attention, yet the millipede entity represents an alternate narrative. Their complete clan slid and hissed resembling disgusting enlarged altered insects. Their ruby stare focused toward an individual insect, evaluating their refusal toward take action. Anthony thanks the deities that his theory proved correct. You might question why the survival-focused insect would risk proceeding into the open near the reservoir region precisely currently. Well, exists merely one reason why he would expose himself before these entities that could eliminate him within a split moment. Alongside his days regarding observing the conduct of the residents, he failed witnessing an entity approaching, hydrating, or leaving the reservoir region attacked, not even once. It resembles a neutral region regarding some sort. Currently, exists plenty of conflicts during those scouting days toward the scaled entity, yet the entities constantly take their disagreements outside the reservoir region. In conclusion, exists something special regarding this liquid force toward compelling the entities toward halting, and Anthony proved confident that it failed possessing anything toward accomplish alongside merely simple hydration. He understands he fails avoiding it out of pure curiosity, yet he genuinely fails desiring hydrating the reservoir liquid. Anthony merely stole his determination, closed his sensors, and submerged his muzzle within the reservoir toward hydrating some of the mysterious liquid. His instant reaction represented leaping out and rotating over, for the liquid burned extremely upon his palate. The portion that he managed consuming ignited a flame within his internals. It resembled consuming hydrochloric acid toward some unknown reason. Exists this genuinely what these multitudes regarding entities have been proceeding here toward? Are they genuinely proceeding toward this region every period toward this agonizing burning liquid regarding demise? If so, then what the hell exists incorrect regarding every them? Was Anthony reborn inside a chamber full regarding masochistic entities? He still failed shaking off the sensation that he lacked something. Aside from the burning sensation, existed virtually no alteration toward his wellness. Based upon its massive popularity, he anticipated something spectacular occurring. Since these entities seemingly fascinated over some reservoir liquid toward days on end, yet toward him it possessed no consequence, nothing whatsoever. Since he had performed what he arrived here toward accomplish, he merely selected exploring the remainder of the chamber elsewhere. Before performing that, he simply fails resisting proceeding toward one additional sip. Currently, he slurped as intensely as he could, consuming as much fluid as his miniature frame could manage. Precisely like previously, it really freaking burns. He required rolling all across the soil, spitting out what he just consumed out of pure agony, regurgitating the majority regarding the reservoir liquid. He selected that it represented nothing but terrible material. He made a mental note toward himself toward never attempting that item again, regardless what. Currently that he has somewhat investigated the mystery regarding the reservoir liquid. It represents the period toward expanding his investigation regarding the remainder of the chamber toward mapping the cave system, utilizing his fresh tunnel awareness. Alongside his freshly obtained capability, traveling has become simple. Everything he requires accomplishing represents proceeding toward the regions where the illumination channels prove thickest. Aside from that, he unexpectedly commenced detecting something from a distance. It made him question precisely what varieties regarding alternate entities hide within these strange tunnels. Following searching through his brain while constantly in motion, he accidentally discovered something quite familiar. A human-built structure created toward bridging a large vertical gap among lower and higher levels by separating it into miniature vertical gaps. Those represent unquestionably steps. Observing downward the step's length, Anthony observed that the winding azure channels additionally existed. Out of curiosity and thrill, he rapidly proceeded his method into the descent toward obtaining a nearer view. It appears as though these steps have been sculpted directly into the stone. Exists even some detailed decoration upon every step. Currently, who exactly would become responsible regarding sculpting solid stone? That represents the inquiry that he enthusiastically requested himself. Why humans? Naturally, this represented the initial concrete proof that he had discovered that any sort regarding humanoid entity existed within this fresh realm. He failed preventing wondering what sort regarding fantasy individuals exist within this place. Anthony dreamed regarding rescuing the powerful dwarfs from a force that threatened their complete existence. Or perhaps he will encounter the famous and mystical fairies recognized regarding their duration and appearance. Regardless what he encounters, he has toward confess that matters become more and more fascinating. He proved half downward the steps when he commenced questioning himself why humans would bother sculpting steps into this particular tunnel and not the alternate ones. Well, toward a self-proclaimed genius like himself, the solution proves nearly self-evident. This route he marched upon must represent a frequently utilized tunnel. Consequently, they created some effort toward making it more practical toward traveling downward and upward. Upon this suggests that exists a high probability that exists additional steps within the immediate region. Perhaps exists even a route toward the exterior, where he could exit this miserable chamber packed regarding threat. That possibility delivered Anthony the bravery toward taking the next step. Here proceeds nothing. While he crosses the downward spiral, he understands that these steps prove even more practical than he initially believed. He failed believing that he failed contemplating this concept sooner. He can actually utilize these steps toward measuring himself. Assuming that individuals within this realm prove approximately the identical dimension as those within his previous realm, then he could evaluate his own dimension toward the steps. He could create a rough calculation regarding how massive he proves utilizing those variables. Upon calculating the figures, Anthony concluded that he might prove slightly smaller than he initially believed. Evaluating by the elevation and length regarding every step relative toward his frame, he ought to represent approximately 1 meter tall. Yet wait, this suggests that those frighteningly enormous entities within the reservoir would prove fairly miniature from the viewpoint regarding a human. Certainly, within Anthony's vision, they resemble titans that could crush out their opponents easily, yet from a mature human viewpoint, they probably represent the identical dimension as typical beasts within the previous realm. This brings Anthony toward questioning the difficulty regarding the entities within this region. Could they actually prove super feeble introduction entities within simple setting? Yeah, that line regarding reasoning opens an alternate, more terrifying possibility. If the entities within this location prove feeble, he fails even desiring understanding what alternate stronger entities hide deeper within. Upon that note, he had selected toward failing proceeding directly toward his demise currently around. It represents farewell toward the hazardous steps toward currently. Yet, upon exiting upon an alternate floor, Anthony observed even more indicators regarding human activity. Existed flames upon the barriers. The farther he travels, the more indicators regarding society present themselves. Perhaps the exterior proves nearer than we believe. He proceeded deeper within the tunnel. The farther he obtained, the fewer pulsing channels regarding illumination alongside the barriers existed visible. Although this arrangement proved perfect, toward a concealed entity like him. He simply failed, shaking the sensation that somehow something proved incorrect. His heart proved literally pounding within his torso, attempting escaping alongside a blend regarding emotions. Exists a extremely real possibility regarding encountering an actual individual from an alternate realm. Isn't that thrilling? He already possesses so many inquiries arranged within his thoughts. What do they resemble? What mythical variety will they become? Would they understand sorcery? Perhaps exists some sort regarding quest organization that investigates dungeons. Perhaps he will communicate alongside them through gesture communication or some form regarding interpretive movement. Anthony's thoughts flew everywhere, and he already imagined the breakthrough regarding insect and human connections upon the largest scale. He proved fairly confident that it fails often that individuals encounter the intellect regarding one among their own confined within an entity frame. It proves possible that he represents the initial regarding his variety. While he ventured deeper within the chamber, it commenced becoming narrower and the gradient steeper. It failed, consuming too much duration toward a dazzling illumination covering his fuzzy vision. Observing above, exists an opening within the chamber roof, and if he failed mistaken, daylight existed entering from above. It represents the initial period that he observed and experiencing the daylight. He apologized toward the sacred illumination toward accepting this luxury regarding granted back within his previous existence. Alongside the discovery regarding daylight, he concluded that the exterior and the external realm proved considerably nearer than he originally believed. Observing within the alternate direction, there seemed more illumination origins ahead, suggesting exists more human construction. Before even finishing that thought, Anthony discovered a partially open timber barrier. Evaluating from the design regarding the structure, he contemplates that it might represent a watch chamber within the middle regarding some dungeon. Yet, the more curious item represented the crimson illumination originating out of the watch chamber window. This illumination proved distinct since it moved alongside the sound regarding scrambling footfalls. Who would have believed that it represented humans? Actual humans dressed within light armor and gripping some kind regarding illumination instrument. Anthony merely stood there amazed at their instrument that could possibly detect the presence regarding entities, because regarding how dark these chambers represent, it must prove difficult toward crossing and locating what they search. While the female held the instrument, the male commenced emitting a sorcerous illumination within both of his appendages. It proved unreal toward observing it within actual duration, yet Anthony calculates that this represented sorcery, actual sorcery. He honored the wizard toward delivering him toward a realm regarding sorcery. He already contemplates whether these individuals would instruct him some incantations or something. While our boy foamed at the mouth alongside the possibilities, the male commenced aiming his appendages toward Anthony's direction. Wait, wasn't that crimson gem supposed toward detecting an entity? That must suggest that it represents active currently, because he became so caught within the moment that he forgot that he additionally represents an entity. Anthony found himself within a spot where a sorcerous incantation has been locked upon him. He represents deceased meat. It failed suppose proceeding this manner, correct. He merely created an error, yet the sole cautious choice toward creating currently represented hurrying away resembling a bug. Sprint, Anthony, sprint. He attempts pleading pity from the individuals. Yet he fails possessing the capability toward communicating. Toward making matters worse, he stumbled upon a loose stone fragment upon the route toward his escape. Anthony desired expressing that he represented merely a miniature and harmless insect, yet the flame sphere crafted from magic was already approaching him. He failed struck directly, yet his appendages ached from stumbling and sprinting. His thought says shift, yet his appendages says otherwise. Confined within a mobile, even additional flame spheres launched toward the unfortunate insect. He required gathering every leftover fiber regarding determination within his tissue toward making the next sprint, utilizing the pillars as his defense. Even utilizing defense proved useless within an alternate perspective. An individual projectile nearly pierced his abdomen. If he desires making it out of this difficulty alive, then he requires an efficient diversion, yet initially he must secure an escape route toward security. He shuffled through the arbitrary tunnels utilizing his tunnel awareness toward evaluating whether the route proved practical or not. Upon proceeding through 3 routes, Anthony discovered one alongside a terrible stench originating from within. The individuals were already upon him. Consequently, he selected battling resembling an entity and squirted a dual corrosive blast toward every them. It failed delaying the 2 efficiently. It merely made them retaliate alongside an alternate projectile. Anthony was becoming efficient alongside his reflexes, evading the screaming projectile by crouching. What proves definite represents that his attempt toward the human and insect entity connections had just vanished upward. Multiple flame spheres desperately chased following the individual insect as though they're some kind regarding guided projectiles. Anthony had been sprinting toward so long that he lost sight regarding the surroundings, bumping toward a jutting stone. Yet thanks toward the wizard blessings, he managed surviving and catching a pause inside a miniature tunnel. Realizing what had just occurred, he commenced punishing himself toward being so foolish alongside how he handled the circumstance. He failed reminding himself that he fails human anymore, and alongside that, his human privileges have been revoked additionally. From currently onward, he requires taking the reality that he represents a 1-meter lengthy entity insect into consideration within every interaction alongside others. Upon the alternate side regarding the miniature tunnel, threatening hissing sounds could be detected. He might have messed up previously, yet he requires waking up instantly. Anthony requires contemplating what proves better regarding him currently, confront the hissing millipedes upon the alternate side or the flame spheres from the individuals behind. Yet, when the male that kept pursuing him alongside flame ominously inserted his skull through the miniature tunnel, it resembled his choice had already created regarding him. Anthony accelerated and commenced sprinting toward his existence as an alternate batch regarding flame spheres commenced condensing upon the male appendage. Luckily, he proved fast enough disappearing within the darkness before the incantation concluded. Utilizing tunnel awareness, he expertly crossed the narrow routes regarding the subterranean tunnel. Detecting that the millipede cluster failed far away, he psyched himself alongside an impromptu strategy. Everything he requires accomplishing represents utilizing the millipede entities as bait toward the individuals. Luckily regarding him, he possesses concealment at his disposal toward hiding his presence regarding the repulsive cluster regarding hazardous noodles. He calculates that he could utilize corrosive spray as a guaranteed method toward angering these insects, yet what arrives following that would determine his destiny. Escaping the furious crowd would represent the ultimate contest regarding duration, and he doubts whether he could accomplish it or not. Deactivating his concealment mode, he understood that he failed possessing any alternate possibilities accessible. Consequently, it represents currently or never accomplish or perish. He carefully aimed his posterior toward the cluster and commenced ejecting his destructive corrosive blast upon the entities. It proved an expertly aimed spread blast that struck just about every millipede within the cluster equally. Yet an corrosive blast just failed powerful nor destructive enough toward penetrating the crowd frames. That proves fine, however. He failed hoping eliminating them ultimately, yet he achieved what he attempted achieving. He angered the cluster regarding lethal millipedes. They instantly pursued our unfortunate insect boy alongside their endless appendages. Toward days currently, the contest regarding duration has officially started. Several moments regarding intense sprinting later, Anthony was already weeping because regarding the mess that he tangled alongside. Obtaining toward the entrance regarding the tunnel system proved taking so damn extended. At this rate, his endurance will exhaust before he can execute the bait strategy. Along the route, exists even some near misses regarding nearly becoming consumed as millipedes leapt toward him alongside their powerful chomps. Observing the illumination near the tunnel conclusion, Anthony achieved a second boost. Upon the alternate side regarding this item, rescue awaits resembling a deranged insect. He leapt out of the miniature tunnel where the male waited regarding him toward emerging toward becoming scorched toward fragments. The male failed anticipating that it would represent an enlarged insect celebration as the millipede crowd additionally escaped from the opening resembling sickening carriages. Anthony achieved a secure landing. Alongside the disturbance occurring, everything that remained toward accomplish represented making his escape. Yet that proves simpler stated than performed when a terrible crawling creature has been angered toward pursuing him toward the edges regarding the globe. Sprinting would prove of no use currently. He merely tucked his frame within and continuously chanted that he failed desiring perishing, as though Anthony desperate chanting reached the ears regarding a deity. The millipede crustacean commenced detonating before approaching him. Who was detonating and cutting the enormous millipedes, you inquire? Well, the individuals upon the alternate side regarding the tunnel were merely attempting catching an insect. Anthony kept his skull downward, not daring attracting attention and aggression toward his direction. He questions whether this represents his opportunity toward escaping the disorder. He inwardly excused himself while he carefully crawled across the war zone. It would have represented a perfect escape, if not regarding the straggler millipedes observing and pursuing following him resembling persistent miniature critters. He proved so preoccupied alongside what occurred behind him only toward bumping toward a human appendage up front due toward pure negligence. Anthony slid backward before the human rotating lance pierced him from above. Moreover, the lance strike supposedly aimed toward him struck upon the straggling millipedes hot upon his path once additionally. Anthony honored the wizard interface toward granting him such generous fortune. He has been spared repeatedly alongside a greater force perfectly timed interventions. He would love honoring the bearded wizard more, yet he still remains within severe difficulty. His fortune would not prove sufficient toward silencing the two opponents attempting catching up from behind public opponent quantity 1, human Melu Sentinel, and public opponent quantity 2 millipede creature. Following obtaining some distance amidst all the chaos, Anthony manages activating his concealment. He plans his next action. Where can he conceal within this location? He observed an open doorway leading toward Didi, understanding where, and selected it would require being performed toward currently. He managed securing a concealment location utilizing his concealment capability and sneaky motions behind the barriers regarding the doorway. He observed the conflict among humans and millipedes that he initiated. He feels terrible regarding pitting his companion entity against human sentinels, yet the circumstance has left him alongside no alternate choice. It represented among either perishing at the conclusion regarding a human blade and detonating alongside human sorcery, or allowing his neighbors wage conflict against the sentinels. Meanwhile, within the silent metropolis regarding Lyria, the careful Captain Titus remains within his chamber laboring until late during evening. The wrinkles upon his face intensified due toward tension, because some cursed idiots simply fail, leaving the dungeon circumstance toward him and his division. If it were up toward the ancient captain, he would remain out constantly within the dungeon, instead of confined within a dark chamber burning wax alongside pointless documentation work. Currently, his duty has consisted regarding stating the identical thing a million times toward fools who fail understanding right from left. Instead of obtaining an opportunity toward swinging his cherished tool, he nearly shattered his table within half out of frustration. That represented the alert toward calming down and obtaining some good manner-rich atmosphere for a moment. Exiting the dimly illuminated chamber, the forward camp soldiers outside rose toward the captain. Captain Titus failed acknowledging their presence. He merely marched directly out of the corridors. An alternate heavy barrier opened, and an alternate batch regarding neat soldiers stood within attention at their brave commander. Everywhere he proceeded, everybody would halt what they performed. He resembled a deity within this location. The captain pushed through until he reached a simple timber barrier alongside two armed sentinels upon every side. Captain Titus requested a summary regarding the circumstance from Tribune Alia, and she carefully followed. 15 moments ago, an entity approached this watch chamber before escaping. The watch group signaled the Centurion upon duty before pushing deeper within the chamber. From the human sentinel viewpoint, they were handling a grotesque insect entity. They were following something that deserved being eliminated alongside the hottest flame and the sharpest blade. Titus found that summary strange. He confirmed if the entity failed attacking head and yet escaped instead. He promptly turned toward the unremarkable timber barrier, alarming Tribune Aurelia and questioning where he proceeded. The captain casually replied that he was merely joining the suppression journey personally. Captain Titus' interest is stimulated by the reports regarding an entity alongside sufficient intellect toward escaping threat. Behind the timber barrier, the sentinel was still busy battling the intense conflict against the millipedes. The sorcerers unleashed their finest incantations toward burning the entities. Regardless how fierce the millipedes were, they were no competitor against the force regarding magic. Anthony was attempting obtaining toward a better location, only toward becoming locked within the middle regarding the chaos alongside, merely his concealment capability toward keeping him secure. Anybody alongside eyes could observe that this conflict regarding humans and entities fails even a contest anymore. It represents merely some plain old massacre at this moment. Anthony proved powerless, too powerless toward adding anything regarding value within this conflict. It feels like he can shred opponents alongside a distant jaw strike, or anything like that. Ignorant moments like this constantly leads him questioning the wizard what he supposed accomplishing. Instead of obtaining the wizard guidance, he obtained a crispy slap from a familiar human figure. It represented human Anthony. He honored human Anthony regarding the much required alert within desperate moments. Observing upon the bright side regarding matters, this sequence regarding misadventures has confirmed so many things that he questioned regarding. Initially, it verifies the existence regarding sorcery within the form regarding human incantations. Secondly, exists a human society within this realm. Additionally, a force gap among his insect self and the humans exists, and it represents enormous. An alternate lesson he discovered proves quite game-changing toward currently. The ruler regarding attributes represents vitality. Following becoming blasted by stone fragments and burned by flame spheres, his vitality reached the critical marker. He was decreased toward 15 vitality, which represents practically half, yet at least he ultimately discovered how much injury he would receive during conflict. The expense regarding that lesson represents currently that he will require locating a method toward regenerating the missing vitality markers. Contemplating methods toward returning toward the green region, he calculates that his vitality will automatically heal across duration, yet it may require being slightly more complicated, and he will require healing his injuries manually through some method. Regardless, he fails, merely wasting the golden opportunity that the conflict he initiated has presented before him. A nearly endless number regarding creature frames were placed down upon the soil resembling a banquet. Some were even cooked by flames. Toward currently, he requires locking in, since exists a mountain regarding tissue waiting toward becoming consumed. Anthony acts upon his most basic instinct toward consuming those much stronger than him, becoming stronger and loading upon tissue alongside every moment that passes. It consumed him quite a duration toward obtaining from one side regarding the banquet toward an alternate. Yet his crop proved nothing short regarding generous. By the conclusion regarding everything, he could barely shift and inhale alongside how complete he proved. Across the complete procedure, he was merely imagining a banquet fit regarding a monarch as the wizard intended within his thoughts. The millipedes were cooked properly and prepared toward becoming as tasty as possible. Yet reality constantly strikes once the meat strikes his palate and travels through his throat. Exists no two methods regarding it. These millipede entities taste absolutely terrible. Contemplating regarding how much of this awful meat he had just consumed, Anthony failed preventing regurgitating. Placing the flavor aside, the tissue that he obtained proves more essential. His banquet regarding a monarch unlocked the fundamental profile regarding his victim, the was scolopendra. He opened the cursed item instantly, and it remained useless as constantly. It merely declares that the claw millipede possesses a powerful claw and a hazardous thorn within its tail. Before spending his hard-earned tissue, he desired taking a view regarding his numbers initially. Everything has been proceeding smoothly when it comes regarding capabilities and numbers. Furthermore, his vitality has commenced slightly healing following some duration. Currently, he possesses 2 tissue markers toward freely allocating toward anything.